Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing media criticism podcast with an occasional bit of humor. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Jason.
And this is Jason's week.
So as I was telling the boys, I have a tremendous backlog of articles because of various hiatuses and such, and so I had to filter through over 100 articles to cut down to my favorite one-third of them.
It was contractually required.
So let's begin at the beginning, which is late May, where I saw an article from The Atlantic.
My condolences.
From The Atlantic. The crypto crash feels amazing. Here's the subtitle. It could have been me. I'm glad it wasn't me.
So it's just pure schadenfreude.
Literally taking the one unappealing aspect of being satisfied with the crypto crash as a commentator, just in it for the vibes.
You know, like I'm like almost there with this author. Like I also enjoyed the fact that it crashed because it was an obvious scam, but having this much enjoyment at like watching people lose their life savings is not really that cool.
But wait, you've fallen into my trap article from Yahoo Finance. Crashes are the best time to get rich. Here's why Robert Kiyosaki thinks Bitcoin's plunge is great news and how you can take advantage of it.
Let me guess, you can buy more of it.
Their literal slogan, their most famous one, is "Buy the dip." Is that just the? It's like they were right all along, even though they're floundering and panicking and committing mass suicide at the moment. This is where you slip in.
Their other slogan that they dropped was "Pump and Dump."
It's called My Sex Life. Got him.
How could they have failed? How could this energized movement,
also known as a gas station bathroom?
I'd go to a gas station called Pump and Dump.
Yeah, if it had free restrooms.
I mean, I think it's an interesting contrast to see someone like bathing in the schadenfreude and like the salty tears, and then someone like, no, just continue the get rich quick. Didn't you know that the best time to get rich quick is when everyone's getting owned?
Yeah, I wonder if this Robert Kiyosaki is one of the people who bought into Bitcoin, as opposed to this guy from The Atlantic. It's just the two types of bros out there.
The two types of investors.
Yeah, there are two wolves inside all of us.
This feels like the two halves of an Always Sunny.
Alex, it's the black
clash.
wolf and the white wolf.
Yeah, the two fucking wolves meme. Yeah. But it's like one of these is the like Charlie Mack axis, and the other one's like the Dennis Frank axis, and they're just trolling each other, and they're both wrong somehow. That's what this feels like to me. Everyone's a shithead. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, true dat. All right, we're gonna move forward to Newsweek, where Manchin admits his brand of Democrat is a losing strategy.
And what brand is that?
Yeah, I really wonder how he self-identifies.
Conservative, Republican, Democrat. I know I've obstructed so much and been like the number one thorn in the side for the entire Biden administration, but I'm a losing strategy. Oh, okay, cool.
Is there like a missing second line that says "for my party"? Because he's definitely getting what he wants out of this, which is to keep getting rich and be important.
Senator Joe Manchin acknowledged that moderate Democrats like himself are seemingly less popular among voters these days, as he addressed a series of recent wins for progressives. Quote, the bases are looking for something that's more sensational, I guess, and more divisive, Manchin told CNN's Manu Raju about Rep. Connor Lamb's loss in Pennsylvania and Rep. Kurt Schrader's likely loss in Oregon.
Why could
I'm not out of step. You're out of step, America.
Why could I be
you
unpopular?
grind my gears.
Why wouldn't the incredibly impoverished people in my state not like hearing me say out loud to people that if they get money, they're just going to use them to buy drugs? What could possibly be unpopular about someone hearing that and then getting no material benefit on top of that?
Do you know what's divisive? The more popular thing. That's divisive, whereas this piece of shit, whose favorability's in the gutter, isn't somehow divisive.
Well, he comes from an old school Democrat system where the idea was to be as least popular and as middle as possible. What a
If
winning
you like me,
strategy in a
I'm doing
democracy.
something wrong. Like I don't know what the fuck his point is. Divisive is basically a synonym for unpopular most of the time. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. How could the divisive thing win? What does that mean?
And-
It's just he's just saying words.
And the really funny thing is that this is all like, what do you call it when you're trying, like, subtweeting? He's like throwing shade at John Fetterman, who just won in Pennsylvania, which is ironic because even Fetterman was not the most progressive person running in Pennsylvania. Because Fetterman
He was like the center right candidate, which again is a lot better than fucking Dr.
Right.
Oz.
Because Fetterman
But,
said something about Cinema and Manchin pledging to always be that 51st vote, basically like to be the one to sabotage Democratic stuff and being, anti-filibuster and all that, or not for getting rid of the filibuster. So it's like he's making fun of progressive popular Democrats. Oh, such losers, and they're not even the most progressive ones. It's so fucked.
I don't even understand why he's talking to the press. Like, he has his corrupt bargain, he has his payouts, he's raking in fucking millions while America dies. Like, why is he talking? Does he just need attention?
He's got to be posting. That's what the job of a senator is. The job of a senator is have lobbyists do your homework and write your legislation and pass it. You make money, and then you go on CNN and shit talk your opponents. That's the job.
I swear to God, it's like the Atlantic and Newsweek would have like a dedicated like Benedict Arnold hour if this was 200 years ago. Like,
that'd be great.
why the fuck are you interviewing him? Like, this guy's a piece of shit, and everyone basically agrees. The Republicans hate him because he's not a Republican, and everyone else hates him for being a piece of shit. So why is he even getting press?
You don't even go here. Why do you exist?
Like, it's, I guess what I'm saying. Like, they do these stupid fucking interviews with like every other like moderate Republican, which is basically the same thing as a Manchin Cinema Democrat. And the reason you do that is because everyone wants the dumb Republican best friend thing, right? It's like we have to dignify the Republican Party somehow by making it seem like they're not all Trumpers, even though they're
right. Like your Sotomayor talking about Clarence Thomas,
right? Even though they're like 90% Trumpers, it's like, well, they have to find the 10% that aren't just to make it seem dignified. Why do we need to dignify Joe Manchin? What the fuck does that accomplish for political norms? He's the one person who's like dragging down the seeming viability of the Democratic project. How is that redeeming anything? I don't even understand why the news tries to rehabilitate him. I don't get like what the benefit there is. You'd think they'd hide him.
All right. Well,
I think it is just the liberal media establishment, as we've talked about before, like needing to try to manufacture cohesion and wisdom in the Democratic Party, even when it's absent in most of the elements. Like, and of course, once again, because they love shitting on progressives, and Manchin, whether he's overtly saying it in a specific quote or not, is recognized as the polar opposite of the progressive wing. And so if he's worth listening to, if his words still have weight, then that means that transactionally progressives don't, or progressives are still immature and wrong. But the point is, he never says anything productive. He is a worthless lump of coal. So yeah, they should not be talking to him. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like a Trump thing at this point. Also, like his name just gets hate clicks.
It just kind of feels like read the room, right? Like, because we're like the entire country's reeling from like Uvalde and Roe, basically, and just like the utter failure of the liberal centrist methodology to solve problems or prevent fascism. And he's like, oh, these divisive radicals on the left. It's like, what? This is like the most outcry I've seen in favor of tearing down liberal norms and establishment I heard in a long time. This is the last moment for him to being like, but what about the liberal norms? It's like, I don't. He's not even representing that. He just is conservative, but like even posturing as that is not reading the room. I don't know.
All right. Well, continuing with news. Town in Maine forced to shut down after sole clerk resigns over vacation denial.
What?
So there's this teeny town in Maine with 350 people, and they have one town clerk who does all of their paperwork and everything, and they sent a request for a 2-week vacation, and the town was like, fuck you. They say, okay, bye.
But like, isn't he also the mayor? Like, how if the town has
No,
250 people?
No, this woman is she resigned back in April because she was denied a 2-week vacation And the town said, we can't let you do vacation because there's no one else to do your job. And she's like, all right, now there will not be anyone to do my job forever.
It seems like
See
the
ya,
obvious
fuckers.
response when you reveal how much leverage someone has. If you go, we can't give you this vacation because you're too important in your job, you're basically just saying use your leverage.
But this, to me, is the beauty of capitalism. Like, obviously, this is not a transferable situation for most people, but they're like, you're so good at your job, we have to punish you. Like, you're so good, we can't let you be a human. You're too vital. You must be a slave. You're so important to us.
Yeah, it's the cotton gin strategy. This is too efficient. We can't not do it. I don't know.
So here's some of the outcomes of this. With this woman gone, the town cannot issue vehicle registrations, inspect homes or businesses, assess properties, or respond to reports of rabid or abused animals. Basically, the entire town is shut down, and it's amazing. This town's also called, it's in Maine, it's called Passadumkeag, which is a great name.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in other words, her resigning had little effect on the tiny town because those things barely ever happen when you have a population of like a few hundred people.
Yeah, but who's going to deal with all the rabid, like, squirrels and shit?
Yeah, maybe it's the most abusive town in America.
It's going to fall like that libertarian town did when the Bears took over.
This is obviously part of like the Great Resignation narrative, and it's just very funny to try to use this as an example. Just such a small kind of outlier that just feels like a nice little rustic story instead to me. And as you say, yeah, like a labor power story.
Well, it's always framed like fucking stupid dumb camel gets its back broken by straw. Like they frame it as if the inevitable, obvious thing that's going to happen is like a personal moral failing. When you combine like 7 people's jobs into one person's job, and then you tell them to fuck themselves when they want a vacation, yeah, of course they're going to retire. Why would they put up with that unless they were going to be like homeless? Like they're not recognizing that this constant fucking downsizing and outsourcing of jobs means that fewer and fewer people have the same amount of labor as a large number of people used to for less benefits and fewer benefits, everything than they used to. So why would it be anything else? And like this is always treated like it's a scandal, like individual, Atlas holding up world briefly puts down world, millions die. It's like, yeah, because you shouldn't have put him in that position. Why should this woman be forced to do this without a vacation? There's no explanation of that.
You're too important to have rights.
Hire a fucking sub for 2 weeks. Jesus Christ, it's not that hard.
No one else knows how to fill out vehicle registrations.
Apparently, if the town has shut down, yeah, which is bizarre to me.
All right, moving on to our first troll article from Gizmodo. Elon Musk completes transition to supervillain with Bolsonaro meeting in Brazil. So back in late May, he was like, I'm going to bring Starlink satellites to help give people in Brazil internet and make sure the Amazon forests are monitored and kept safe. And then they have this meeting. He's like, they're just both bitching about Twitter. And that's the entirety of their meeting. Thoughts on his what's the character from Simpsons?
He's not cool enough to be Hank Scorpio.
Hank Scorpioification.
Hank Scorpio was both more handsome and more likable.
He was also a cartoon.
Well, that's the analysis in question.
In many ways, so is Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's fair as well.
Here's an image of Bolsonaro looking like
Chungussy?
Something's wrong.
So basically, Elon Musk went to Brazil to try to arrange with Bolsonaro subterfuge to further survey the Amazon for natural resources. I'm hearing.
Right, it's like when he was bitching about LiDAR for so long. It's like, turns out LiDAR is really useful for scanning underground and finding shit. He's like, yeah, just basically billionaire globetrots to get corrupted, bargains and deals done for himself. But no, it's for the kids. It's for the Brazilian kids who don't have internet.
How long do you think he was waiting to meet with assholes like Bolsonaro, but had to keep pretending he was a liberal? Like, how much has he been itching to hang out with assholes like this?
A long time.
He's been a right-wing crank for 10 years. It's just that he's not been vocal about it as much. He's always been dancing around the margins, being like, I'm just a strange libertarian. It's like, no, you're not. everyone who fucking has a brain could tell he wasn't, but he couldn't admit it until like a few months ago, and suddenly he's like, it turns out I'm a shithead officially. Like,
I think he had to wait for the luster of the Obama administration to wear off.
Yeah.
So like, he's not afraid of Biden, like calling him a shithead Jack or whatever. So he can now be himself. He's been in the closet. He's been in the fascist closet for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And now he's just like, finally, I'm free. I can be myself. I can go to despots all across the world and
I can go get COVID from Bolsonaro.
enrich myself. Get emu AIDS.
Yeah, you have to wait till Grimes divorced him.
Conscious uncoupling.
Who, despite her name, is substantially cleaner than Bolsonaro.
And there's the Simpsons connection. Frank Grimes. Done it.
By Joe. Yeah, unsurprising. Very funny though that this is what turns him into a supervillain. I know I mentioned it like every episode since I brought up the headline, but like killing a bunch of monkeys with brain bombs is much more supervillain than
that's some Ex Machina shit.
Meeting Bolsonaro. Although I would say, whatever Bolsonaro has brewing inside of his body is more likely to turn you into like an actual supervillain than whatever kind of biological agents.
It's Horace meeting with Nurgle. I mean, he's getting around all the chaos.
Bolsonaro was like a friendly postman until like the Venom alien ooze entered him. Yeah. He's like a completely normal guy. And now he's like the most sickly fascist on
Brazilian
Earth.
Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
All right, let's. I don't know. I have no idea why Gizmodo's talking about this. I guess it's somehow tech related if he's like launching satellites and trying to give internet. But I guess Gizmodo just wanted to change the shit on.
Yeah, I think if Musk is in the news, they'll talk about it.
He's tech close enough, right?
Yeah.
All right, on to something much sadder. To the Daily Beast. There's a right way and a wrong way to do police reform, and there's this like something on here. It's like 2 years since George Floyd. Demonizing cops and defunding departments is madness, but so is telling police to reform themselves without community involvement.
All right, so is there a subhead to this, or is this one of those like
that was the subhead,
completely vacuous? Because like this could literally be substituted for anything in the world. There's a right way and a wrong way to become a democracy. Like it doesn't. You could say that about anything. It conveys no content.
There's a right way and a wrong way to butter your toast.
There are two kinds of people in the world: people who do A and people who do not do A. Like, all right,
people who cut their toast into a triangle is madness.
Yeah. So the first problem I have is just that it's intentionally cowardly and that it's not stating what its actual politics are in the title. And then the obvious bigger problem is that it's going to be some completely disingenuous horseshit about how to do police reform without any intention of doing that. Like, you just know it's going to be one of these articles. It's like, we need to do better body cams. We need to do police need to go to mandatory sensitivity training to like cry harder at the funerals of the people they assassinated.
Yeah, police need to read white fragility as they put their knees on black people's necks.
Yeah, just something completely fucking pointless and just like insulting to the intelligence of the people who they're brutalizing.
And I do think it's funny that I think demonizing cops is the absolute right thing to do. I think they should acknowledge and realize they're the baddies. They're the demons. They're the ones doing the majority of the damage. They're the ones enacting violence. They're not the ones helping and protecting. They're like with the recent shooting that just happened a couple days ago, like they're chasing people down and putting 60 bullets in them. That's what cops are in America. You absolutely should be defunding them. That's not madness. What their existence has been madness.
Yeah. I mean, because if you start from this feckless premise, you could theoretically turn it into a truth. You could say there's a right way and a wrong way to do police reform. The wrong way is to try to do police reform. The right way is to abolish the police.
And just construct a short circuit by making community involved, systems.
It's just like, again, I don't want to be like provocative for the sake of being provocative, but I don't think there has been a single period in the United States history where the police functioned as described. Like, I don't remember a time when the police were some sort of benevolent, unambiguously non-racist community protection organization. Like, right. if you go back, you've got not just like the slave patrol shit, but you've got union breaking, you've got basically just like beating and clubbing protesters to death and arresting people for
throwing
exercising
Irish
their rights
out of pubs, you know.
They don't like there was never a time in which they did the thing they're advertised to do. Like if you want to abolish the police and then create a new institution called like the Happy Fun Squad who do what the police say they do, which is just like make sure everyone's having a good time and vibing. Okay, sure.
Ride around on a horse with a nightstick and like look cool.
But it's completely absurd to continue to give the police the propaganda premise that like they've ever been this protect and serve, above corruption. Like they've never been that ever at any point. So this whole absurd shit that's like we need to reform. It's like reform them from what to what? You can't reform a foundationally broken thing. All you could do is revise the kind of broken it is.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
I'd like to ask this guy, how do we reform the Bloods and Crips? How do we reform the Latin Kings? Because police are gangs. They just are. We all get this. We all acknowledge this. They're just state-sanctioned gangs.
Look, there's a good kind of mafia boss and a bad kind of mafia boss. All right. We have to, the five families really figured it out. And I think we need to, it just feels like, it feels like they refuse to accept manifest reality because it doesn't jive with like, leave it to Beaver logic. Just traditional tropes about what the role of this institution is in society.
I also want to make it clear that I'm not condemning gangs. Like there are good people in gangs. There are people who have no other options. There are people that's the only life that was available to them. They didn't have education. They didn't have chances to escape. Like there are good people who become police and they are forced to do evil things or lose or, get fired or lose their job or get killed. So it's not a condemnation of people. People are, capable of tremendous good and tremendous bad. We've created institutions with incentives that create bad behavior. That's what is meant by reform. When you defund them, when you take away their weapons, when you take away their armored tanks, when you take away their license to kill, you get good people doing better things. It's not saying like they are cursed and forsaken and a Calvinist sent onto the frying pan of hell forever. Change the incentives and you get people doing better things. That's true of all collective action and all politics.
And critically, for anyone who gives a shit about like working people and regular human beings, in the wake of the protests that we're seeing across the country over the last several years, but especially the last couple of years, the police have demonstrated what they are. They've demonstrated what their institutional bias is, which is they're going to resist the popular will at every turn and try to serve the powers that be, whether that be institutional racism, whether that be capitalist hierarchies, whether that be protecting the state or not protecting the state, depending on whether there's an even more right-wing thing they can serve. Like, they've very clearly demonstrated over and over again what their actual loyalties are and what their logic is. They're essentially just thugs who serve a regime. And if that regime is not good, then that's even worse than regular thugs. So I just like, it's not complicated. Like this is not rocket science at this point. So I feel like anyone who's like, okay, the way to do police reform is to, do hopscotch in a certain manner or whatever. They're wasting our time. And I'm pretty sure it's cynical. I don't think they're really confused about what the police are at this point, because anyone who's paying attention knows what the police are at this point. They're not even hiding it.
And I mean, the subheading gets at two things really, without going far enough or being explicit enough. One, in saying that communities must have input, and that it can't be left to police to do on their own, indicates two things. One of which you've already touched on, Jace, which is that what it should be saying, instead of being so incremental and short-sighted, is that it should police reform should involve, and the end goal of it should be to transfer power and
just go straight to community policing
to communities from police. But the other side of that is that the reason that reform doesn't work, beyond the fact that, as you guys say, the core principle and tasks that they fulfill are not all the ones that they espouse or advertise, is that reforms don't work because we never put any mechanisms in place to ever hold them accountable or put consequences in place. Like we've seen now, over 2 years out from the George Floyd killing, that even places where reforms were supposedly instituted, unlike most places where they weren't, despite what press will try to tell you, they weren't effective because police didn't follow them, because it was just up to them to do it. And why would they do that? They don't want less power. They don't want more accountability. It's annoying and grating and hurts their egos and limits their ability to abuse and act freely.
And not only that, but they can use the veneer of having seemed like they're reformed to get away with the same crimes under the cover of saying, "Hey, we crossed our I's and dotted our T's," even though that makes no sense. Or to even further just push back against even reasonable reforms by going, "Look, the crime's still bad despite the reforms. Time to repeal all reforms."
They can just lie and say they were defunded and that these strategies actually made their jobs harder. And there's also something I want to make clear for people if they haven't already understood this. The vast majority of police do not live in the area in which they police. So police act as mercenaries. They don't police the community they live in. They don't have a vested interest in keeping safe their own neighbors and their own children and their own schools. They go to do different places to crack down on crime like soldiers coming into a foreign land. This is a very basic reform that is as easy to do as whenever we have a census and we reshift who represents who. If you just have people policing their own community, they're much less likely to wantonly murder each other.
Well,
and
also,
that's too much. I went right out of the question.
It has to be civilian, though, right? Because if you leave the police as a separate institution with its own hierarchy, then you end up with a situation where they feel that they have their own essentially class interest, which is distinct from their community, even when it is their community.
Right.
So, part of the advantage of community policing, as you say, is that it's people who know each other. But the other advantage is that they don't have some ludicrous power imbalance over each other where they feel like they have separate interests. There's two kind of halves to that change. And if you think, hey, there's a fucking thin blue line between me and everyone else in the society, and I'm above them, and the only thing that matters to me is protecting my essentially interests as an officer, well, then it doesn't even fucking matter if it is your community. You have to think, hey, the number one important thing for me is the community that I live in and the people they're in. That has to be the identity that you see as foremost in your mind. And that's simply not going to be the case with the way in which we currently structure police. So it has to be torn down and rebuilt if you want it built at all, which I don't. But if you do, you need to tear it down first. You can't build on rotten foundations. It's just going to collapse again over and over again. You're going to know what happened. What happened is it doesn't work.
That's a beautiful transition. Speaking of building on rotten foundations, from The Hill, ranking the 5 Democrats most likely to win party nod if Biden doesn't run. So I'd like everyone to guess the 5 that The Hill thinks are the best Democrats going forward.
I hate that.
Pelosi, Schumer, Cinema, Manchin.
Ooh, interesting.
I mean, Cinema, Manchin are jokes.
I think Pelosi's too old.
I do too. I don't think The Hill does, though.
They're going to put the rat fuck in there.
That rat fuck have a name?
I can't remember his name, but I purged it intentionally. Yeah, Buttigieg.
Mayor Pete.
I guarantee you he's in the list somewhere. I'm guessing they put Hillary Clinton in there as like number 5 because fuck Sanders people.
Oh no, that's later.
They put probably Michelle Obama in there, I'm guessing.
Ooh.
Probably Kamala Harris just because she's current VP. I don't know, Andrew Yang, because that makes no sense, and that's the kind of thing they do.
All right, I mean, you guys are on the right track, but it's
Featherman. I'm going to say Featherman is in there.
It's much more boring.
Oh,
it's literally, this could have been written in 2016 or 2020.
Okay.
Here's their top 5. Vice President Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and still kicking up the rear, Amy Klobuchar.
There's no fucking need Klobuchar. She fucking resigned because in embarrassment.
No, it's fine. I literally think they republished this article from 2 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, that feels like a complete rehash. I mean, I actually did guess 2 of them.
Yeah. And they did say Bernie, just 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm surprised they put him in there at all.
Though he's ancient.
I wouldn't have even put him in there just because of the reality of his age and the circumstances.
I just like that in the midst of all these deep, serious political conflicts and issues in our country, The Hill's like, here's your top 5 list of Dems to kiss their ass. It's like, what is the utility
Time
of
to
an
start
article
betting on the horse race 2.5 years too early.
Right? It's like, what are they doing?
If these are the luminaries of the Democratic Party, then this is an article of despair.
We entered into the era of despair. All right, that was just go ahead.
Yeah, there are worse choices, some of which we mentioned though, so I guess I have to give that to them.
All right, that was just a quick little palate cleanser.
Yeah, I can't wait for that fucking Sanders Klobuchar ticket.
Every American deserves a stapler and a pantsuit. So, back to some serious business. From Bloomberg. 1/3 of Americans making $250,000 live paycheck to paycheck, survey finds. Here's 2 little bullet points after. Cash is especially tight for top earners of millennial cohort. Very few reported issues covering all their housing expenses.
What does this mean?
I think
I don't understand what they're talking about. Like, you're talking about people who, by definition, are in the upper echelons of income. Are they implying that everyone below them is just in a graveyard already? What are they saying?
I think what they're saying is 1/3 of people who are relatively well-to-do and make 5 times more than the average salary of like a full family have been convinced by the media that the expression paycheck to paycheck is important. What do you think?
Wait, what is very few reported issues covering all their household expenses mean?
It means they're actually not living paycheck to paycheck. They're under delusion.
So it's just like I can't go on as many vacations as I want to.
I don't have as much cash in my wallet. Inflation's hitting my $250K salary hard.
For the subheading to so immediately contradict the premise of the,
I know
the heading is truly incredible. I was ready to be somewhat open-minded and be like, well, maybe it's just about like the dream of the middle class, and if you have a big family, you can't really afford it because everything is so shit cost-wise. But no, it's just absolute garbage. As
Aiden's mind is an open and shut case. So let me give you a little more on this. More than 1/3 of Americans earning at least $250K annually say they are living paycheck to paycheck, underscoring how inflation is taking a bigger bite out of Americans' budgets at all ends of pay spectrum. Some 36% of households, taking in nearly 4 times the median U.S. salary, devote nearly all of their income to household expenses, according to a survey by industry publication PIMPS, P-Y-M-N-T-S, I don't know what the fuck that means, and Lending Club Corp. It's particularly true among millennials, who are now in their mid-20s to early 40s. More than half of top earners in that generation report having little left at the end of the month.
So the average annual income for an American is just over $50,000. So these people are roughly 5 times the average American's income. They're way beyond the expectation for their generation, suggesting that they're mostly going to be people who came from existing wealth and were just kind of grandfathered into existing fucking jobs.
They can't pay the mortgage on their house, though. On their ballooning house value.
What? Like, are they living in a fucking penthouse suite on the top of a skyscraper in Manhattan? Like,
yes,
what are they spending the money on?
Yes, exactly. They're all living in insane cities where there's gentrification and inflation and housing costs that are like skyrocketing fast.
I'm just saying, it's like saying like Johnny Depp can't pay his loans because he spent $4 million on a bottle of wine. It's like, okay, why should I care? That's his fuck up. Like, that has nothing to do with his salary. Like, when someone has an enormous income and incredibly baffling luxury spending, those things have nothing to do with actual precarity or actual financial duress. That's just a self-created nightmare.
Right. Will someone think of the rich people? Will someone please think of the top 5% instead of the top 1%?
It's like a fucking article coming out like Jeff Bezos' his net worth has dipped for the first time in 18 months after he bought a yacht. It's like, oh, yeah, no shit. Because he bought a huge yacht. Like, who cares? I don't understand. There's no housing in America that's so expensive that you could not afford it with a $250,000 salary unless it's like a mansion for a whole family.
That you need to buy in cash tomorrow.
Right. Like, we're not talking about even buying outright. This is like renting. You can't rent a place on $250,000 a year. I don't know where you're living. Like the moon?
We're talking about practice. Talk about housing.
Like, I do understand housing has become astronomically expensive. It's incredibly brutal for people who aren't making large sums of money. But they're talking about the handful of people who are making huge sums of money. Fuck you. God damn.
To me, the biggest thing is the language. Because there's another quote in here. About 78% of Americans, I think this is overall Americans, this is from a separate survey from the Federal Reserve. About 78% of Americans say they were doing okay financially or living comfortably. And this is the highest it's ever been since 2013, even though we're in the middle of some horrible affordable cost crises. So the average American is like, you know what? All things considered, I know my mom just died of like cancer, and I know my son's school just got shot up, but things are looking up. And then rich people are like, but paycheck to paycheck, though. I can't afford my new Maserati. Like, it's such an insane class reversal.
What's also, it's not even representing how the wealthy are wealthy. It's not like most CEOs are making, $80 million a year or whatever. It's like, it's mostly like stock options, and it's mostly like assets that they have invested in and that they can take rent seeking from. Like, salary is not the only form of income, and the
Right.
richer you are, the smaller a proportion of your income it represents. So to be like, oh, 250,000 a year, it's like, there's some places in Manhattan that couldn't pay for it. It's like, okay, but how many millions of dollars in secondary benefits a year is this person making? Because if you're making that much in income as just salary, you're probably making 10 times more in all those other things. So are they even going to bother talking about that? I don't. This is not a description of how the rich are rich.
Right. And the other beauty is that it's just a self-selected survey. So it's just, how are you feeling, instead of what are the actual numbers. So it's just rich people feeling self-conscious.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
It's an optimism index.
Correct. All right, let's move forward.
I would like to point out, if it was real, that would be an awfully serious condemnation of capitalism, wouldn't it? Like, if even the rich are living paycheck to paycheck, like, truly it has failed at that point, if like goods and services are too hard for the rich to afford.
Yeah. All right.
Fucking wild.
Let's move to the Daily Beast, where Canada is set to temporarily decriminalize cocaine and meth.
Cool.
Thoughts?
Wasn't this like related?
And MDMA.
Wasn't this like related to like the trucker thing? Like they seized, like Trudeau seized like a certain kind of executive power. I thought I read about this in relation to that. And that this was like a side effect of like executing some existing statute or something. Like
Were the truckers like, we need amphetamines if we want to do these insanely long drives and dangerous roads? Or what's the
Trudeau did it in support of the truckers?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I just saw this. I thought it was hilarious.
Trudeau doesn't strike me as the kind of person who's doing this for the right reason. So if it is a national level change, it's probably something stupid.
It looks like it's, as I read a little more, just saying residents of British Columbia.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing I was going to mention, is that they have a lot of power delegated to their provinces, just like we have a federal system. So this could well be localized.
Yeah, it's a new 3-year trial program in the province. The province appealed to Canada's federal government for an exemption in November because a lot of people are overdosing.
Yeah.
But now, instead of just throwing them in jail if you find them, it's like lead them towards health and social service resources.
Well, it should be mentioned that the reason why this is important to anyone who's not already aware is that if you are afraid of going to jail, then you're much less likely to call for medical services when you're overdosing. So it's not whether you want people to be doing meth or cocaine. I assume most people, even on the left, do not want that to be the case. The question is, do you want people to feel comfortable calling necessary medical functions without fear of going to prison? Because if you make it so that they're afraid of calling, then they're much more likely to die, which is not a good outcome, even if they are suffering from serious drug problems.
In fact, it's the reason that rapper Juice WRLD died. Is because he took a whole bunch of drugs with him on like a plane, and then he panicked and forgot, and so he consumed it all like before the trip, and then he overdosed. Yeah. And it's the same way that actor from The Wire, who's a really good character actor, died. He was at like a party with a bunch of celebrities, and he overdosed on drugs, and everyone's so scared, like, oh no, my reputation, I don't want to go to jail, so they don't call the police, and then they all fucking try and take care of it themselves, and some of them die. Like, the number one way to prevent overdoses is having this stuff decriminalized, so that if someone starts to overdose, you immediately call 911 and get police and get ambulance to save people's lives.
I understand this is a move in the right direction, but does it frustrate anyone else that like it's always fucking like a neoliberal form of implementation? It can't just be like decriminalizes drugs or decriminalizes drug permanently or anything that like you can put a fucking sticker on that says it happened.
Now we're means testing this trial phase.
Like,
it's only in this one province, and it's only for 3 years, and it's on a non-permanent basis.
Right, it's just like the 600 black women in Georgia on UBI. It's just like, I understand.
Gay women.
It's a step in the right direction, but like, just do the thing. Like, if you ethically agree with the common sense proposition that people should feel comfortable calling medical services during an overdose, well, that applies no matter which illegal drug they're taking.
They're just putting their toes in the water, Alex. It's too much. It's too soon.
It
Can't
just
move
doesn't
this
track.
fast.
It's like the police show up there with the ambulance, and they're like, okay, which drug are they overdosing on, though? As they have handcuffs in one hand and an ambulance, keys in the other. It's just like, why even create the uncertainty like that?
They have to figure out if the guy's on heroin, he doesn't get the exemption, so he could just die in a gutter. Or he gets to go to jail.
Right. All of you who have taken the wrong kind of illegal drug, please proceed directly to jail. And the rest of you, please proceed to medical care.
Oh, we need like a drugs monopoly board.
Form an orderly line. It's just, it kind of shows you like the idiocy of using this law and order approach to solving social problems. Like the law is an ass. Like that's just the way it works. It can't just make like a sweeping statement that says, do the fucking right thing. Treat people like human beings. It's just like tinkering in the margins in all these asinine ways. Like I don't want to say it's impossible. Like I guess you could theoretically have an administration that isn't neoliberal garbage that passes a sweeping reform, but it just doesn't feel like the way it ever has worked.
All right, time to read something more upsetting. Let's say you've got some final closing arguments on the drug argument.
Got some fire?
Absolutely nothing.
Fair enough. On to CNN. Biden is considering canceling some student debt. Here's why it might not be such a great idea. Biden is considering not killing your dog. Here's why it might be a better idea to just put it out of its misery.
The idea being the amount he proposed, or the idea being doing anything at all?
What do you think CNN's arguing here?
I mean, I know what I think.
I know what CNN thinks. So, together.
Voltron with your powers combined.
I mean, 10K, and it still produced 1 billion of these headlines from conservative and, especially financial publications. So
and 10K was just like a handout to the rich anyway.
It's optimistic, but it'll still help poor people, but not at all as you. Yeah.
But here's the problem, though, right? If you means test it, which they're planning to, if they even do it, which they might not, but if they means test it, that means they have to determine that the people who get it make a certain amount of money. So you might think, oh, that's only going to help the poor, not the rich, right? Because they made sure you couldn't get it if you're super rich. Well, no, because the only way to tell whether it's means tested is to check your tax income, and the super poor don't even pay taxes generally, or don't have their information up to date, so they can't even qualify to try to get the relief. Whereas people who are relatively well off, just not the uber rich, already have their taxes submitted and technically still qualify because it's not the uber rich. So it's really just a handout to the upper middle class and to the like lower half of the upper class. That's the way these fucking neoliberal handouts always seem to work, and they disguise themselves as some sort of handout to the poor when it's always literally the opposite.
Right. It's a total reverse Uno, and this is one of the main contentions in the article. Let's see if I can find the second. Helping poor households as well as high earners. And this is framed as a bad thing, even though, to Alex's point, what this ends up doing is only helping the high earners. Or the middle to high earners. So here is this person's main contention. Student loan debt cancellation won't lower the cost of college. Who said it would? No one said it would. An economic boost or high cost for all? Giving people money, I mean, that's inflation, though. It's like, it also helps them just live and contribute to the economy and grow the economy. Helping poor households as well as high earners, as I said. And the last one, some loan forgiveness programs already exist, but they don't always work. How is that part of their point?
We haven't done this thing correctly, so why would we do it? Well, maybe you're just incompetent and shouldn't be the person at the lever. But like the reality of all these fucking debt schemes is that they always link it to some sort of fucking means tested bullshit instead of just saying, no matter what your circumstances are, we're shaving this much off your student loans. Or even better, just no student loans. Okay, they're all canceled. That would be the simplest thing of all. But because they always fucking link it to means tested stuff, they have to get your income data. And we don't have a reliable way of doing that because the US's bureaucracy is a fucking joke. And the only way to even legally get access to the information about what your income is would require you to submit it yourself. And people in this country who are now disproportionately more poor than they've been in generations are not always in a position to share that. It's just the reality. A huge number of people do not share that information.
There's one clerk at the IRS who does everyone's taxes and income, and they wanted a 2-week vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah, this article is disgusting. It makes me want to do bad things.
But again, we're at a point where it's like economists have basically figured out that school is no longer going to pay for itself over the course of your entire life. Like school costs have gotten so high that the average increase in salary at the job you would get with the college degree is not necessarily higher than the amount that you'll have to pay in fucking loan interest over that same time. So like, it's not even like, oh, we're giving a handout to the elites or something. It's like we're just literally helping people survive the bad decision we conned them into making, which was going to higher education. It's like it's a relief program from the false information that has been drip fed into the middle class for their entire lives, which is that this is somehow the route to success. Instead of just glutted the fucking job market and let everyone's wages get depressed. But it's always wild to me. Like they make these arguments. It's like, do we really want to take on the burden of student loans as a society? It's like you could make any argument against that would work just as well at saying like we should abolish all public schools because that's the cost on the society. Why shouldn't the individual child pay it? Why should we pay for hospitals when the individual should pay it? Why should we pay for firefighters? Because it's a fucking public good. Like that's the point. No one's arguing that it is cheaper to do the right thing in every case. That's not why it's the right thing. If you always just did the cheapest possible thing, we'd all live in a fucking tin can and there'd be no social services at all. And when you died at like 35 of a tooth infection, it'd be like, oh, that's just the way it is.
And for all you risers and grinders, the lesson here is sometimes you need to spend money to make money.
Yeah,
like sometimes you need to invest in your society and you actually get more out the other end. Who'd have thunk it? What were you going to say, Aiden?
I just said, yeah, it's an investment. It will yield much more bounty than you put into it, but it will take some time. But yeah, it's just like if it costs something now that doesn't have tangible benefits to corporations, then it's not a valuable use of the public's funds.
The other thing you could do is you could put caps on how much the fucking private schools can charge. You could always tamp it down from the other direction. You could use market controls. You could regulate the market of education.
Or just nationalize them and send all the bureaucrats to hell.
I guess what I'm saying is this absurd loan crisis only exists because of the greed of private corporations who run the schools. So this is a market outcome. Why do conservatives always fucking hate market outcomes?
Yeah, this is a feature, not a bug.
To me. It's wild to me that they're like, well, why did the students take on so many loans? Well, because we have an unregulated market for this. It's the obvious outcome of the way you designed the system. You can't be upset about that now. If you didn't want it to cost the fucking public this much, then you shouldn't have allowed them to be gouged.
No, it's your fault. All right, moving to something more comical from the Hill. Representative Louis Gohmert, quote, this is a literal quote.
Okay.
To Newsmax. This is all in relation to the Jan 6 hearings shit.
Uh-huh.
Quote, if you're a Republican, you can't even lie to Congress or lie to an FBI agent, or they're coming after you. This is a quote that one of my favorite representatives, Louis Gohmert, has said to the public. Discuss.
I mean, he's correct. Well, I mean, on a literal level, it's a rare instance where there's an unambiguously factual statement made by a Republican.
Can't even lie anymore.
I mean, I don't know. The 6 overtly conservative justices lied to Congress, and no one's coming after them. So I don't know how true that really is in the end. But I don't know. What the fuck is he saying? What the fuck is going on?
I see what you're saying. You're talking about like
all the fucking weasel language they used in their hearings.
That other dipshit being like to the woman, well, we're not going to vote against abortion.
Yeah, because they all read fucking carefully worded Heritage Foundation garbage that was like, we acknowledge that it is the law of the land at the present time, and there is precedent potentially in that ruling that one made. Like, they all used fucking weasel language that you couldn't technically say they were lying, but they were all obviously lying.
Like Thomas saying he's not a sexual predator, like clearly.
Yeah, well, yeah, all right, that one's true. Yeah, that one's fucking.
Got it.
Well, but to me, their job is to decide what should be the law of the land. Whereas I don't think a representative's job is to lie to like the FBI. It's a little out of the scope. But in Gobert's insane mind, here's his full quote. It actually puts an exclamation point on the fact that we have a two-tiered justice system. If you're a Republican, you can't even lie to Congress or lie to an FBI agent or they're coming for you. They're going to bury you. They're going to put you in the DC jail and terrorize and torture you and not live up to the Constitution there. Like, this dude is... He's get on his man.
These guys are just fucking clown shoes.
He's go to British Columbia, get his coke.
There used to be a time when you could have like really weird third parties, like in the 19th century, that would have like one issue and be completely goofball and like still somehow get like 20% of the vote. And they would ride a few people to Congress and just like troll. I feel like some of the Republicans have that energy going. Like they want to run like the Patriot, Moose party for Hercules men. Like they just have this insane energy that's like everything's a conspiracy. Everything that you know is wrong. Birds aren't real. Like the secret shadows are upon us. It's completely absurd. Like he's not even arguing the obvious thing, which is like there's an actual trial of a former Republican president going on to some degree, which is fairly unprecedented. Because he doesn't want to talk about that because they're wrong, like because he did the crimes.
Here's a bonus quote. So it's very clear. If you're a Democrat, then you can lie. You can cheat. You can do whatever you want. It's exactly your point, Alex, which is if you're in a criminal trial and your defense is, but the other side, though, that's not a criminal defense. You can't say, well, the prosecutor's lying, though. Like, that's...
Well, it's also not even the case. Like, it's both irrelevant and incorrect. Like, the Democratic side of things is brutally corrupt, but not in the way he's imagining. Like, they're corrupt because they serve the same fucking masters, not because they're actually doing the crimes. The crime part is almost entirely Republican.
God, I love Louis Gohmert so much.
The degree to which they have blatantly, like, just brazenly violated almost every rule and norm and law surrounding, like, succession of power in the last 2 years and involving, like, the normal way in which you transfer Supreme Court justices in the last decade, involving almost every part of our system. Like the Republicans used to kind of play the game a little more, and now they're blatantly cheating at the game. So what is his point? Like, we shouldn't have called them on that? We should have just been like, no, cheat away. Like, it's bad enough that it happened. We have to be like clapping when they do it? What did he expect? Like, even if he was being persecuted, which he's not, because the Republicans get away with fucking murder, literally. What? Like, they want to fucking trumpet fanfare as they like destroy the country.
Yes, because they imagine this as their apotheosis, where the angels come down and the six-eyed, titted beings singing trumpet music as we ascend to the kingdom of heaven. Because this is their conception of America.
He thinks he's fucking Palpatine as like the Senate cheers as he sees his power. It's like, that was a movie. Like, most people
written
are
by
smart
a dumb
enough,
man.
right? And most people are smart enough to tell that you're evil. Like, even if they're evil along with you, they still can tell you're evil. Like, they're not going to clap.
It's just the epitome of the persecution complex at this point. Like, they all think that they're Prometheus, that they're trying to give fire to humankind, and they're being punished to have their eyes ripped out by eagles every morning. And all they're trying to do is like kill women, oppress women and minorities, and make it legal for them to get their dick sucked in public or whatever. I
vote for that law.
Yeah, by minors.
Ooh, yeesh.
Like Chilean minors emerging from a Republican's cock.
Yeah, we'll save you if you give us a blowy on the way out. I just like, this is so absent any kind of cohesive logic, but it does in a very odd way get to the heart of just the buffoonery and arrogance at the heart of this current iteration of the Republican Party.
All right.
Like, this guy's old, right?
He's 68.
Like, he's not one of these like 37-year-old like wine moms that is like trotted in on a mule to Congress. Like, he knows how this works. This is he's just an idiot. I'm assuming.
Yeah, but Gohmert's been the dumbest rep in Congress for probably the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Let me check when he was first came off.
Is this the guy who was saying, like, can we change the gravitational, patterns of the world rather than restrict greenhouse gases?
I mean, seems likely. Yeah. He's been in office since 2005. He's been he's the foghorn leghorn of the right, and he's been that way for 17 years.
Yeah.
That's why he's one of my favorites. You will never not get a choice quote from him. And that's hence the spawn of this article.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving forward, still in the Hill. COVID-19 cases are on the rise. Does it matter anymore?
I would say not as much as it used to, because this is happening like every 3 weeks at this point and will be forever. So it matters, as much as it ever did. But it's basically just a fact now that because everyone has given up, especially our government long ago, has given up on COVID, any kind of prevention or care regarding it. Yeah, I mean, we're always going to be at risk. I guess, pay attention to when the next strain comes by that like makes your eyes fall out of your head. But until then, it's just waves. Keep yourself safe as you have been, if you are able to have that convenience and care to.
I mean, interrupt. This is a month-old article.
It's your again for an interrupt.
Here's a follow-up article. It's a month newer. The Omicron subvariant, now dominating the U.S., is, quote, the worst version of the virus we've seen. And then, bonus double interrupt.
From the Wall Street mana to cast as many interrupts.
From the Wall Street Journal, red states are winning the post-pandemic economy.
Yeah.
So I guess the Hill was right. I guess it doesn't matter anymore.
So, what I was going to say 2 interrupts ago.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly callous way of describing mass death. Like, I know it's like kind of funny because of how goofy the Hill is, but like, can you imagine if the article was like, 800 more civilians' heads got blown up by mortars in Ukraine? Does it matter anymore? It's like there's 1 million dead. This is the greatest loss of American life from a single source in our lifetime.
Since the Civil War, maybe? Or
probably since, like World War II. No, it's definitely more than World War II. Probably since, I don't know. Maybe the Civil War? It's staggering. It is a number of deaths that Americans have never experienced previously in our lifetimes, because it's unthinkable that a wealthy country that considers itself the hegemon of the world would ever allow this kind of suffering and death among its own people. I mean, when a tiny fraction of this died in 9/11, it was unthinkable. When a slightly larger fraction of this died in our own wars of aggression abroad, it was unthinkable. The fact that we're like over it really gives lie to any kind of giving a shit about each other as Americans, like all the patriotic shit claims.
A quick journey to Google says that in World War I, we lost approximately 116,500 men to actual combat.
We got in it too late to really have lost.
In World War II,
volume there.
We lost approximately 420,000 military and civilian deaths.
I know Korea was pretty costly. Did that reach 1 million?
Korea, 40,000 Americans died.
Yeah. There was no recent war that was even close to this casualties.
In the Civil War, 620,000. You have to put together the Civil War and World War II to approach the losses that we're going to experience over the next year of COVID.
I mean, imagine if you were going, it's like the week after Normandy, and they're like, another, 2,000 Americans were shot to death by machine guns on the beaches. Does it even matter anymore?
And
what the fuck is wrong with this?
And now you might be saying as you clean the Cheeto dust off your fingers, but not all of those would have been avoidable. A lot of people who died from COVID were old or already sick. That is true, except we have studied this as well. Multiple hundreds of thousands of those deaths could have been avoided with basic healthcare, with basic public policy being implemented and not being broken and done totally state by state immediately.
I mean, like 90% of them could have been avoided if we had a robust public health system that had preemptively stockpiled masks, ventilators, and systems that would actually get us to lock down in an appropriate time frame. Look at other countries which have had not even 1/10 our deaths under similar circumstances because they had rational responses to the pandemic.
Yeah, but Alex, it doesn't matter anymore. We're in the post-pandemic economy, and the red states are winning like they're Charlie Sheen.
So I just read that article today, actually. Cleverly constructed, but extremely manipulative. It tries to make the case that Republican states are like handling the economy better because
they've opened up and just
because number go up, right? Like
Yeah.
they're pointing numbers, but like it's an exact map of where all the people died. So like the number went up because they were willing to kill the people.
Right.
So it's like saying this much blood magic was successful in Florida. Like, okay, yeah. And how much human sacrifice was worth it? Like, I don't understand the point. Like, Florida lost more people than most countries to COVID. Are we supposed to be like happy that they had like a 1% increase in revenue because of that? Because that's literally what they were arguing. They were
DeSantis
talking.
is happy.
Texas and Florida were the two that they're pointing to as like victory conditions. Well, first of all, they're both like anti-abortion shitholes now, run by complete psychopaths. And secondly, their economies went up like 1.4% in Texas.
And they also have giant blue urban centers.
1%
most of the
in
business is
Florida.
done.
They're celebrating pathetic amounts of growth at the cost of mass human death, as if that's a meaningful thing that happened. And the other half of the article, which they don't talk about at all, but which is actually the entire motivator, is that rent prices in blue areas have gone up because their cost of living is too high because they have civilization. So all the places that people want to live are becoming too expensive to live in, so they're forced to go to places they don't want to live. So they're going from blue states, which generally have much stronger economies and therefore incredibly cutthroat, ruthless rent gouging.
You know,
they're going to shitholes where they don't have to pay that much.
I connect this to our earlier discussion on police. And the simplest way I found to frame this is, in America, property rights are greater than human rights. That we value property and money and assets more than we do life, dignity, well-being, minimizing suffering. Like, we care more that number go up and rent value go up than people died. And that is, I mean, sickening. As anti-human as any civilization has ever existed on this earth, where we value things other than our human life and our citizens' dignity than anything else.
I wasn't talking about it. There's even more problems with this
Go
fucking
up.
article, because I just read the whole thing, so it may as well be a fucking mini dive. The entire framing, first of all, they admit in like one part of it that like there's actually no evidence that any of the changes had anything to do with politics. Like they said there was no correlation between the people moving and like changing political norms or values in any way. But also, they frame it as a fight between the red states and the blue states over who's going to win the recovery. When the reality is the only way to end a pandemic is an international effort. Forget even just a national effort. You need an international response to fight the pandemic. It's not about who has like the most open McDonald's per month. It's not even addressing the fundamental issue, which is ending the pandemic. The only thing they're talking about is like, what's our GDP? That's not the right question. No one gives a shit. How do you end the pandemic? Because first of all, even if you're a cynical piece of shit, the GDP is going to go up a hell of a lot more if you end the pandemic than if you don't.
Right.
So ending the pandemic should be number one, even just from the fucking perspective of bottom line. So the red states, which have been dragging their fucking heels and causing this thing to linger on forever, are the reason why all of our GDPs are down, because we can't just end the pandemic within our borders, because they're not masking and they're not vaccinating because they're insane. So they're the reason why all of the states are fucked, essentially, because we didn't have unity on this issue. And number two, the fact that they were willing to throw all these people to the wolves and just let everyone's grandparents basically die is a perfect example of the kind of sociopathy and lack of communal spirit that goes consistently with a title headline. It's like, yeah, this is a battle between the red and blue states and not a cooperative effort to survive a fucking nightmarish pandemic.
The national hatred we all have for each other, like the fact that the average American doesn't give a fuck about the next American next to them, is the continuation of this trend, as you say. It's just about, are we winning again? You know, who's our opponent? Who is our enemy? Are we opened up? Oh, get fucked. I don't care about your grandma. Like, we are so evil towards each other, and it's become our modus operandi as America.
But also, The article's not even correct because Texas and Florida are like purple states.
But actually, that's what I was saying with the deep blues.
Do you think fucking Oklahoma and Alabama are surging right now with influx of immigrants? Like, or Utah like the most conservative places on America? No, it's just the places with big fucking boom economies and psycho governors.
What's the Black Panther? What's the place that what's the fake city they live in Africa?
Wakanda?
Yeah, there's like a secret Wakanda in Oklahoma where they've got flying ships and shit. Their economy's secretly booming.
It's just wild how many problems there were with this article. I actually get more irritated with these Wall Street Journal ones than just like Fox.
Yes, because they're much worse.
Like if Fox will just be like, the Jews are coming, like to kill you. It's like, all right, like I get it. Like it's more directly offensive, but I can dismiss it in like 1 minute. Whereas these Wall Street Journal ones have just like layers and layers of horseshit.
7-layer dip of horseshit.
I don't know. And like what kind of soulless piece of shit spends like, I mean, it was a long article. It was like, I don't know, 5-6 single space pages writing all of this stuff for like this trivial fucking minor increase in stats that they invented from a think tank that was run by conservatives to prove that conservatives did the thing. Like, it's this most like soulless bureaucratic shit. Like if this one person stopped writing this article, then like a whole town would stop functioning. Basically, because it's the most make work fucking article you can do. It tells you absolutely nothing you couldn't have inferred from the logic of we don't care about human life, so we opened the businesses. It's the whole thing. Like I could have guessed the contents of the article.
All right, well, we ready for a palate cleanser?
Yeah, I'm ready to shut the fuck up. I'm tired of talking.
From NBC New York, NYC cancer trial delivers unheard of results. Complete remission for everyone. And just for everyone's reference, here's why I said palate cleanser, because it's about rectal cancer. Yay! We're basically almost curing rectal cancer,
Yeah,
which is gross but cool. And it's a tragedy that stuff like this doesn't get talked about more, but it's also an indictment of our media landscape that this is not front page news everywhere all the time, that we're fucking curing cancer. And instead it's like, here's the top 5 Democrats you need to suck off before the next election.
Okay, but was it a blue state that cured cancer?
Yes, apparently.
Well, there you go. That's why the Wall Street Journal didn't cover it.
So yeah,
when the war over cancer.
They straight up cured cancer in all 12 of these patients on this trial, and their rectums are all fixed.
All fit to poop.
All the news that's fit to poop? Yeah, there you go.
You think rectums are gross, you should see them with the cancer. It's a lot less gross after this has been accomplished.
I think this is great. I would like to live in a world in which we are progressing towards curing all the cancers.
I also vote for that.
A very easy thing to second.
Let's do that.
As someone who eats as much meat as I do, I'm very glad this was accomplished.
Someone who frequently boofs, I'm also in favor.
Yeah.
All right, let's move back to bad news.
Gomer, you can't even boof anymore.
Right, you can't if you're a Republican, you can't even boof to the FBI anymore.
Yeah.
From CNN, UK judge allows first flight sending asylum seekers to Rwanda to go ahead. Heard about this?
I don't even understand who's who in this sentence.
So the UK has passed this insane system where like we don't want to make any room for asylum seekers, so we've signed a tourism deal and travel deal with Rwanda to ship like brown asylum seekers who are coming to the UK to be sent to Rwanda. And they can't come back. This is permanent. It's not temporary housing. Because Rwanda wants to like burgeon its economy and the UK is fascist.
But like Rwanda has like a diplomatic mission with Britain to house their unwanted asylum seekers?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they signed a giant government contract. So basically, Rwanda's paying for like the housing and the costs and the living costs, and the UK gave them basically a giant contract to a private business that's doing all the transporting.
Wait, why would Rwanda pay for that?
No, Rwanda's getting paid.
Oh, I see.
A big contract by the UK government because the UK government wants to outsource dealing with all these asylum seekers because many people who are seeking asylum from like the East want to go to the UK and other parts of Europe, and the rest of Europe is already taking people in. This is even true of like Ukrainian people, but basically because the UK government's evil and all they know how to do is sign private deals with corporations, they've done that with Rwanda because Rwanda has this interest in this, in like building its base of people and taxing them, and like It's just an insane private enterprise deal that they think is going to solve their asylum seeking problem.
I'd give it like 18 months before Boris Johnson's seeking asylum in there from something he has to flee from in the UK.
Well, actually, speaking of, there was recent news today. 2 more ministers of his stepped down, so he's probably
Yeah.
fucked. But we've said that for the last
he's
years.
very fucked.
He's in a Bolsonaro state. But yeah. So thoughts about deporting asylum seekers to some foreign land for a corrupt bargain?
And monstrous. But I read a New Yorker piece about this when it was happening. And it basically said that it was always obvious that this was not going to work. It was going to get struck down by European courts, which was
that's why they're not part of the EU anymore.
Which is obvious, and because of the North Ireland Protocol and all the complications there, basically, the European courts do get involved, and so this was just a ploy by Johnson to essentially try to continue to foster this Brexiteer base by conflating like foreign judges and European bureaucrats with, brown people in dinghies or whatever the average Tory imagines. Which I
the Europeans want those brown people in your neighborhood kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They'll fight to get more violent foreigners on your block. But
so this won't happen, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that was at least.
I think some of the fights have happened.
Really? Because I didn't keep up. This was, I think, I don't know, probably mid June when the
I read is from June 10th. But let me double check and see what the latest July news is.
I would like to point out, like, Rwanda's had a pretty fucking rough time in the past. I wouldn't have selected them as the first place to send a large number of ethnic minorities without property or homes. It seems like not the greatest place to do that.
They've come a long way, Alex. It's all right.
Yeah, the one African country everyone knows because of a famous Hollywood movie.
It's also very small and already extremely fractious for obvious reasons. Why, like, you couldn't have sent him to a place with a lot of arable land and free space, at least?
In short, Boris says, no, I could not do that. And
apparently Rwanda is Africa's most densely populated country.
That's kind of what I was getting at, yeah.
And it's already home to an estimated 150,000 refugees from other African countries who basically just are worked as slave labor on farms and as servants.
Yeah.
Literally as, quote, as domestic servants. I don't know. This article I'm reading is now from like June 29th. It seems like Aiden's right that they're still arguing about this in courts.
Yeah, so I mean, putting aside the fact that it may or may not have been like an intentional kind of Tory Trumpist type attempt to rally the base or rile up the base. Yeah, I mean, just like if it were to go forward, and even to just try to attempt it and message that this is the right thing to do is unbelievably cruel. It's just, just a good reminder that the UK is in lockstep in many ways with our own conservative cruelty.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they even get ahead of us.
Yeah, in some ways they're ahead, in some ways they're behind. It's bizarre. Our bizarre posh neighbors.
I will say though, like, I thought it would be any other country in Africa. Like, this is almost, that strikes me as like parody. That's what they chose.
It's real. I mean, the obvious place to go is Madagascar. So you can't get got because you only got one port and one airport.
I haven't made a pandemic reference in a while.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to some maybe good news. From Mashable. A NASA rover just found trash on Mars. Now, the reason I love this is because this is the epitome of, like, liberal, like, pouting. Like, can you believe we have put trash on Mars? Or if you're a right-wing psychopath, you're like, the aliens are on Mars, and they also do trash. Like, we need to murder. Like, this is... It means nothing. But they like this. They want to turn this into a cultural conflict, and I'm here for it.
Every time we send anything anywhere, it shoots trash everywhere. Like, the amount of shit that has to be expelled just to get into space or to launch back into space from wherever we landed is enormous. You ever watch a video of like how NASA operates or how the fucking cosmonauts operate or any of that? There's like tubes and nodules and bottles of shit and explosions all over the fucking place. Because that's just how it works. Everything's detachable. Everything is as efficient as it can be, and they jettison waste. Like, yeah, it found trash that it just put there. It's just it means nothing.
So I read the article. You were right. It's actually some like thermal foil from when the thing descended.
Of course it fucking is. I was only half joking.
I thought it was going to be like a Stop and Shop plastic bag, and some woman's going to be like, "Can you believe we put we could put a man on the moon, but we got a trash bag in space." Oh my god, this is nothing.
Correct. It's a non-article.
It's been debated. God damn it. Sometimes you get got.
I've watched several different videos, both for entertainment and because I had to in school, that literally showed how these things land, and it shoots shit everywhere. It's not surprising.
But I want to live in a world where there's little Martians putting trash around to confuse us and so discontent like the devil. It's a funnier world. A more mysterious world. More mysterious Jogo.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward. What were you going to say, Aiden?
I just said one day, God willing.
Where do I want to go next? We're going to go back to treaded ground. UK edition. The Guardian. How much money is needed for ideal life? Most are okay with £8 million, study finds.
So that's what, like 10.5, 11 million
So if
American?
you weren't impressed with our two people who were in the top 5% of median income are complaining about being paycheck to paycheck, here's what it takes to be considered just okay in England.
This is, I assume, lifetime.
Oh wow, the pound really took a beating after Brexit, huh? So that's the equivalent of
$10 million.
9.5 million American.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be a lifetime, right? Because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. It's one of those, like, how could you get a house with 250,000 a year articles.
Okay, this is insanity. Quote, how much money do you need to lead your absolutely ideal life? The answer for most people, according to a new research by university psychologists, is $10 million or 8.6 million pounds. But not Americans. Americans say they would need at least $100 million and frequently insist on $100 billion to lead their, quote, absolutely ideal life. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, they all want to, like, own an island and have slaves. Like, I don't know. Like,
is the average American so dumb that they just say, I want to be Elon Musk, I want to be Jeff Bezos? That's the only way to live an ideal life?
It's the framing of the question, right? Because if the question is, how much money would you need to live a comfortable life? That's very different than, if you were a Targaryen, how many dragons would you breed in your genetic lab? Like, yeah, I mean, like, I'm perfectly willing to bet that Americans are being fucking stupid and selfish, but it also strikes me as the kind of thing that was probably pulled. Like, the Brits are just as fucking greedy as we are.
Yeah, it seems like the study is based on a bizarre question about how much winnings from a lottery would you be content with? This is bizarre.
So what? Shit? You win like 20 million, you're like, garbage. I'm not
satisfied. I'm gonna keep buying lotto tickets.
Like, I mean, what? Like, the fuck are they talking about? What? Like, most people have no idea what this would even mean. Like, the vast majority of people are never going to have more than like $10,000-$20,000 in their bank account at any given time. How would they know what it would mean to have $10 million versus $100 million?
Yeah. Here's the article if you'd like to read. It's bizarre, but I just thought it was an interesting segue from the previous discussion of wealth. Absolutely bizarre. People like these numbers are not conceptual for most. Like, most people will not see $1 million in their lifetime ever as saved and accumulated in a bank account where you're seeing 6 zeros. So it's all fantasy. It's like saying how much money I'm going to make in Warframe, or like, doesn't mean anything.
And ironically, like, if it's, which it probably is, a lifetime amount, a lump sum for the 8 million pounds, I mean, I generally agree with that. It's like 120,000 per year if you're thinking you're gonna live like into your mid 90s or something.
Yeah, that'd be plenty.
That's plenty. Like, it's more than I need, but it's enough to be comfortable and have some luxuries, that's like fine. But yeah, it's this weird. The weirdest thing is just like this desire to ask questions like this just to like keep up once again the obsession with monies and amounts and always be aspirational beyond what's possible, reasonable, or moral. And even non finance obsessed, non right wing rags like the Guardian still kind of fall into this trap because people eat this shit up. It's like a BuzzFeed quiz, in the form of a push poll. It's very it's just like generally unhealthy, which is, I mean, as we've talked about many times, especially with social media, I guess the unhealthiest things are what get people's attention, unfortunately.
I'm reading a lot of quotes from this article from the actual people, like psychologists who conducted it, and they're trying to frame this as a positive thing. That what they took away is that people are actually overall more content to not have as much, and are maybe more okay with having wealth taxes and using that to pay for sustainability, and like that they're actually more satisfied with not this insane degree of like gluttonous materialism. But that's not the way the article is framing it. That may be what the scientists got from it, but that's not the way the Guardian is presenting this information. So there's a huge mismatch between the Guardian's analysis of this and then what I'm getting the psychologist analysis, like towards the very end of the article.
Well, there's also a fundamental misunderstanding of the causal relationship between people's opinions and the society they live in.
Right.
We are conditioned to believe we need huge amounts of money because that's the foundational myth of capitalism. That we all need to become the CEO, that we all need to become the entrepreneur, that we all need to become mega rich. Of course, we will not become those things. It's just a thing you chase to put a fucking carrot in front of the donkey. But if we didn't believe that, then capitalism would be failing to indoctrinate us, which it is
and
not.
Be overthrown. Right.
Like, it is not failing to do that. It is extremely effective at doing that. That's why we have a show, is to talk about how effective it is at doing that. Like, we live in a system that propagates itself constantly at all times every day. If you watch any kind of television or media in which there are commercials, they will spread this message. If you listen to anyone giving a motivational speech, they'll spread this message. If you go to a college commencement, if you just talk to the fucking other people at work, this is culture through and through in the United States, Britain, and most other Western nations, because we have this completely delusional conception of what actually we need financially, or how we would get it, or what that would mean for other people around us. So to be like, if we had somehow wanted even more, then that would prove like, I guess we can never do left-wing things because people are just too greedy. It's like, no, you're making them greedy.
Yeah.
You're convincing them that they need something they don't need. That's the whole nature of consumerism, is to convince people to buy things they don't need. So it's completely absurd to be like, I guess we're just born capitalist. A system that was invented like 350 years ago. It's fucking stupid.
Well, speaking of stupid, we're heading back to the Daily Beast to talk about our favorite. Rep. Lauren Boebert. Quote from Lauren Boebert: "When 9/11 happened, we didn't ban planes." Now, this is in reference to one of the more recent mass shootings. I don't know which. It doesn't really matter. Now,
This is actually my favorite quote of hers.
There's a really interesting irony and morsel in here that I wonder if everyone listening and watching can identify. Why don't you guys take a swing at it?
And the most obvious thing is how dramatically we increased security to get onto those planes.
Right.
It's almost like we constructed an entire surveillance state based on a single terrorist act that radically changed our futures, our fortunes, our wars, our role in the world, our GDP, our human rights, our constitutional rights. It's almost like we didn't ban the planes, but we did all sorts of other banning and coercion. And her brain is just so like dinosaur-sized that it's just 1-to-1. Shooting, ban gun, 9/11 ban plane.
Also, by her logic, we had like 6 9/11s just yesterday on the 4th of July. Like, if you're going to say 9/11 is the equivalent of a school shooting, well, we have an awful lot of fucking 9/11s, don't we? Maybe we should take it a little more seriously than a single event that happened once 20 years ago.
When COVID happened, we didn't ban... Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I mean, this is staggering levels of stupidity if this is her actual belief. If she's not able to comprehend that we constructed an entire security state post 9/11, How is she like 10 years old?
This is one of the smartest things she's ever said.
Huh?
Like the fact that there's actually a grain of like if A then B in it already makes it one of the smartest things she's ever said, which is to say she's actually trying to make an argument. And the root of her argument is basically we shouldn't overreact to a thing, which like for her with like a second grade education is like, all right.
Oh, I don't know. I think you're reading this way too generously. I think she's so dumb she doesn't understand that the Patriot Act is like a direct result and is just as regulatory and coercive and controlling as attempts at, gun control are. And like, she's not able to put. I see what you're saying. You're saying she's almost doing like a smart propaganda thing.
No, he's like the bar is so.
I don't think
lower
she's
than the bar
capable of that.
You're holding up for her right now. Like just basic kind of sentence construction is a gold star performance.
Because usually she talks like Charlie from Always Sunny, and her argument is something like, "If here by now ye be, then do not do the restriction of the gun. For see, I like gun in town." Like
seems to be here a picture of a chicken holding a gun.
I mean, she's a fucking moron. And like her greatest accomplishment is giving a bunch of Republicans like chili gas and like hemorrhoids. So like I don't know. Like this actually is a complete sentence with a grain of logic. It's wrong, but like it was a starting point. Like I could see a way in which someone would go, all right, there's something here. Like that's for her.
What do you think, Aiden? Because I think she's her while it is in fact a complete sentence, it totally misses the premise of how countries react to tragedies. They pass legislation to more regulate those industries. That's what we did after 9/11. That's what people are trying to do now post all these shootings. Like she seems not capable to understand anything beyond gun control means banning guns.
Yeah, that's entirely correct. Yeah, that I don't think that this is trying to obfuscate at all. I think Boebert doesn't understand how she kind of contradicts the argument that she is trying to conjure here by saying, oh, we didn't ban planes, so we shouldn't ban guns, and 9/11 was worse than I guess a billion shootings, as Alex was touching on. But yeah, no, that's entirely correct. And even if she did, I don't think she would be able to, through her own bias and just through her own lack of critical thinking skills, put together the fact that one is the Patriot Act and the ensuing dominoes after that in the building of the security state is the same as, and actually magnitudes worse than what it would take to regulate guns.
Right, background checks being improved. But like, this woman is 35, okay? She was 14 years old when 9/11 happened. She was a thinking agent. She was a 14-year-old teenager who was capable of watching television and understanding what taking plane trips probably looked like. To not understand that there were gigantic, tremendous, earth-shattering, and like system-wide changes post 9/11. Like, we talk about the world as a post 9/11 world. That America's role in the world has been fundamentally altered since that event. To act like it's just no biggie. Oh, we didn't ban planes though. Like,
yeah, I mean, we were. I was 8 when 9/11.
Yeah, we were in 3rd grade,
and I remember the glory days when you didn't have to annoyingly take your shoes off. Like just that,
and like stick a baton up a granny's asshole.
Yeah, you could like get food on the plane.
You didn't feel like you would be.
You could be a Sikh and not get like murdered,
detained by Magneto every time you walk through.
Yeah,
I'm making art for that.
Or have like your grandma get her panties ruffled by the fucking security state, and just like a bunch of creeps basically sexual assault everyone in your family. Yeah, that was a pretty cool time before those things.
But we didn't ban planes, though.
Also noteworthy, we did basically ban Muslims and aggressively attack random unrelated Muslim countries for the next 14, 15 years. So that happened.
But that was good.
So I guess by her logic, we shouldn't ban guns. We should occupy and invade like white trash towns all across America, preemptively looking for the terrorists.
We need to match these pieces of art. Yeah, I mean, this is staggering levels of.
I like to imagine an alternate reality where this is just an example of something that Bobert does once in a while, which is present like a kindergarten level, like historical fact without any kind of thesis or argument, you know? Just kind of inform people, yeah, when 9/11 happened, we didn't ban planes. All right, see you next time when I
This is
remind you.
something you'd hear on Sesame Street.
Yeah, exactly.
Big Bird comes in like, did you know?
It's that Skeletor meme where he gets up and walks away after saying something stupid. Oh, what the fuck is that one called?
Or the like Sailor Moon with the magician, where it's like, I'm off now, but you didn't do anything.
Yeah. Didn't I? Yeah, this is. I mean, there's nothing here, but that's what. I mean, that's her signature.
All right. As the show starts to slow down, I'm trying to pick some positive things to end on. Where can I go?
Godspeed and good luck.
Are you
Fuck
a good
it,
enough
maximum
article
chaos.
to save the podcast?
I'm going to cause as much suffering as I can as quickly as possible.
Well, that's totally consistent with what you just said.
Two articles from The Hill. Have wealthy Democratic elites abandoned the working class? Also from The Hill. Now more than ever, Democrats need Hillary Clinton. These are published like a week apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we must beg at the feet of Hillary Clinton. Please come back and tank another election.
Out of curiosity, need her for what? Because it's not winning an election. So do we need her to like scold the working class? Do we need her to like sourly frown at the Republican to seem somehow even more repugnant? I don't know.
How old is she?
We need her in
74. Jesus.
Now more than ever, we need Walter Mondale. Like, why? Why would you bring back a person who had one chance and did not succeed? Like, what's the point? Like, I don't even understand what their argument is. Like, this time it'll be different for no explicable reason.
And also holding in their head at the same time the idea that Democratic elites who are wealthy have they abandoned the working class? Like, where you been the last 50 years?
Yeah, but it's The Hill, so I expect like the next line of that to be like, and why it's good.
Like the CNN article, and why it might not be such a bad idea.
Yeah, why wealthy Democratic elites abandon the working class and should have done so like 50 years ago. Yeah, I mean, what the fuck is there to say on this? Like, Hillary Clinton is basically the reason you can't get abortions anymore if you think about the consequences.
If you think about it, think about it real hard.
Her RBG and fucking Obama kind of trioed that one. I don't know. It's up to interpretation, but I don't think we can afford another Hillary involved in our politics again, to be honest with you. I don't know who else could have lost to Trump. Can you think of another American politician who could have gotten to the point of being the Democratic candidate and lost to Trump?
No, I think Warren would have beat him. I think Bernie would have beat him, obviously.
Right. Who else would have lost? Who else is that unlikable?
Biden did beat him.
Maybe Yang.
And like maybe Buttigieg, maybe.
No,
but like I think even he would probably win.
No, I think Newsom would beat Buttigieg. And
I'm just saying she's so uniquely despicable that basically it was like an edge case where Trump was able to sneak in. I mean, it is baffling to me that people still have not come to grips with why that election went the way it did.
Right. It's been 8 years, right?
Or 6 years.
6 years? Man, time is a flat circle.
I mean,
Trump, 6 fucking years.
Trump is obviously the biggest evil outcome of that result, but we only get Trump because the Democrats field the weakest possible candidate they could. So it's kind of shared responsibility on that one, huh?
But this time we won't have email gate or whatever they called it, and maybe this time the toxic cyber assassins of the Bernie Bro Brigade won't assassinate her chances.
Yeah, well, this time Julian Assange is going to be like beheaded by the Biden administration. Yeah. So I guess he won't be around to do that.
I think I skipped out on an article that was about like some court in Spain is trying to indict Mike Pompeo in a Julian Assange assassination plot.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's funny, but a little niche.
Well, it's also unambiguously true because it's been leaked. Like the documents are out there that are like, yeah, we were going to kill him. We actually covered it on the show a few months ago.
Yeah, it's funny.
All
right.
But yeah, like it could not be more transparently obvious to anyone who actually followed the 2016 election carefully, which he should have been because it was important. Yeah, like Hillary fucked the dog on that one. It was about as bad as you could fumble at the end of the game as you possibly could. Like no one else could have fucked it up that bad, who at least had any chance of even becoming the candidate. So for all the people who are still posting fucking like butter emails, gifs, and think you're clever, like you own the responsibility for this as much as any Trump dipshit. You cannot fuck it up that bad and then be like, oh, this is just MAGA world's fault. I mean, it's now public knowledge that the Hillary campaign actively ran ads on behalf of Trump when it was the Republican primary because they thought he'd be easier to defeat later. How the fuck did that work out? Was that a good strategy, Democrats? Again, like no media coverage or ownership of that at all. And Hillary gets to write books about like how America failed her. Well, you basically fostered terrorism and fascism, and then it won because you're such a fucking terrible candidate. Great. We can't get enough of that. Let's even say Hillary Clinton was like a socialist. Let's even say that she was actually a leftist and like I had no ideological objection to her. I would still hate her because she enabled this by being so uniquely fucking toxic.
So your policy is never forgive, never forget.
Fuck that bitch. Basically, like one notch lower than the hatred I have for Trump, because they're more or less the same person.
Right, and they were for much of their lives. All right, so I'm going to take us in a wacky direction in our closing minutes from an article in Kotaku, but it's also, once again, like I like to talk about Google News. When you find an article, it gives you related ones to give you a kind of full context on the story. So here's the baseline. And here's some additional versions. So this is from Kotaku. Ted Cruz is a microtransaction whale.
On Pornhub.
And then here's some other ones from PC Gamer. Ted Cruz says he's interested in talking to Asmongold, who's like a WoW streamer, about loot boxes. And then here's the other one that I think is really funny from the Gamer. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz wants to protect kids from pay-to-win games, but makes no promises about gun violence. So let me get to the details of this one. Apparently, Ted Cruz has a podcast, and he is quoted. This is from his latest episode. Ted Cruz says he is a gamer and reveals his strategy. Quote, you can buy in-game items and make your character stronger or get advantages. I'll confess, I buy it because it's a lot more fun if suddenly your character has a lot of great stuff that would take you 6 to 12 months to build up. I'm pretty sure Ted Cruz just came out and endorsed Diablo Immortal with this message. And the fact that Ted Cruz is owning he's a gamer is one of the funniest revelations in modern political history.
Not just that, but like a piece of shit phone gamer who's like, everything's pay to win, and I like that.
He's like, he's like, along with his porn habits, he's like, I've been playing Genshin Impact, and I'm really a fan of the...
I just finished jerking it to like MILF porn, and then I entered the cheat codes that I bought with real money, because this is a healthy way of living my life as an adult man.
I spent $20 on this Rift, and I got all the uniques and gems I want.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Our politics is so fucked.
I mean, what better encapsulates a Republican than using money to get an unfair competitive advantage to stroke their ego? Yeah, all right. That tracks.
What were you going to say, Aiden?
I was going to say, I think even more perfect because he starts by saying, I don't like it when you can buy in-game items and sort of make your character stronger. And then later,
but I do it.
Immediately says, but I always do it. So basically, yeah, I don't like when I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, but as long as it gets me power, what the fuck? Let's do it.
I mean, I have all this fucking NRA lobbyist money, and I'm not going to fucking go against them, so I got to spend it somewhere.
Yeah, no, he's stimulating the economy. He's making Blizzard get money. Oh, holy shit.
His podcast is with Michael Knowles?
Yeah, dude's the worst.
What the fuck? Who listens to that?
Ted Cruz! That's who.
Yeah, this makes perfect sense, though.
I love this story. I love that he's a fucking whale gamer.
Do you think... I mean,
this is better than Bat Boy.
I feel like this is also this clumsy attempt to be like, "Hey kids, I'm a gamer. You know that about me?
Vote for me." Your ghoul like Giga Chad PvP asshole who's spent thousands of dollars on a game and I have better shit than you. And I'm really just a fat blobfish in real life.
There's one upside to this article. There's a non-zero chance that I will kill Ted Cruz
in a game
at some point in a fictional setting.
In Minecraft. We can finally say in Minecraft.
Let's finally do it.
Yeah.
We've done it, folks. All right. All right, final article. And you know what it's going to be. It's an animal article.
Yeah.
We're
From
back.
Newsweek. Minnesota girl, 11, chases down giant carp and catches it with bare hands.
This is a
Wow.
Pokemon story?
I will show you the image. It's the greatest image ever constructed.
Or is this the next, like, Oakja?
Here is a carp.
Is that the carp or just a carp?
I don't know. I don't think Newsweek does their homework.
Yeah, looks
let
just like Magikarp.
I think no, that's a stock image of a carp. Okay. Thanks, Newsweek. So here's the story. A young girl has caught an enormous carp with her bare hands in the shallows of Lake Minnetonka. Oh, they might have an image.
Wait for it.
No, this can't be real. No, it's like a different river monster thing. Maddie Freeze, an avid fisher at 11 years old, regularly participates in kids' fishing tournaments, ranging from lakes and rivers to ice fishing. The Freeze family from St. Michael was on a family day out in Lake Minnetonka when Maddie spotted a huge fish near to where they were in the shallows. She, quote, she started running through the water chasing it, and then she dove under, grabbing it by the tail, and it swung around to get away from her, and it got away. Maddie's mother, Diane Freeze, told Fox 9. And then she dove underwater again and did a big bear hug around it and picked it up out of the water. Freeze estimated that the carp weighed around 45 pounds and half of the weight of the average 11-year-old girl. The giant fish was released back into the lake after Maddie took some proud pictures with her catch.
And
This is so wholesome.
They say that these new generations don't have drive. Look at this. A regular Davy Crockett.
I'm pulling up an image of what a 45-pound carp looks like. This is the
Well,
news that really matters.
That looks like a dead pregnant fish, so Roe versus Wade's first victim.
And it was an 11-year-old girl who did the abortion. Got him.
What was the stupid fucking actual case? Why do I keep saying Roe versus Wade? What's the one that they used to return it, overappeal it?
Dobbs.
Fucking Dobbs. I'm just going to think of Lou Dobbs when I talk about it.
Yep. Lou V. Dobbs.
Another abortion. Well, that's a fish.
We managed to turn it into a depressing Roe v. Wade comparison.
We've done our job.
Did you have a happy one to take us out?
I mean, I think catching a fish was cool. Let me give a quick peruse of my remaining articles.
There are two comments on this piece, and they are perfectly aligned, as all things should be perfectly balanced. The first one is a paragraph that stops with "Please stop promoting animal abuse," and the second one is "There's a place for all of God's creatures right next to the potatoes and gravy." Smiley face.
The true left-right divide in America, being fought out in the comment section. All right, here's my final animal article. I guess it's positive, but who knows? From Business Insider. A pair of orcas are hunting great white sharks to eat their livers, causing the species, great white sharks, to flee the coast of South Africa.
Jesus Christ, this is your positive one.
Not exactly what I was referring to, but all right.
The orcas are on the case. The Sherlock and Watson of orcas are butchering great white sharks and eating their organs.
I don't really have a shark in the game, so.
And they're driving away the great whites from South Africa.
I don't know. I think nature's jumped the shark at this point.
I know we have. All right, folks. Well, we'll try to actually have an upbeat one next time. But stay strong.
We march to the downbeat.
Catch them fish. Eat them livers.
See you next time.
Bye.
See you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential workers podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.